today? Oh my goodness, there's an echo. Okay, well, I'm here and I've got an amazing panel today. I've got Jeff Riseley from the Sales Health Alliance, Johnny Crowder. We're going to be talking about mental health today, which is such an important topic. You know, as the pandemic has evolved and how that has impacted mental health and being able to, you know, really have conversations about it, reducing the stigma, and really creating spaces where we can have conversations about it, I think is so important. And I am so honored to have these guys join me. So if you've got any questions or thoughts or anything you'd like to share, please share in the chat. You know, Jeff and Johnny will both answer questions and, you know, very well versed in strategies for mental health as well as, you know, support. So I will let you guys introduce yourselves. So Jeff, let's start with you. Tell us about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, so great introduction. My name is Jeff. I'm founder of the Sales Health Alliance, and my whole kind of purpose around starting Sales Health Alliance was to help salespeople improve sales performance, resilience, and well-being through better mental health. So my perspective is, look, salespeople are the corporate athletes of an organization that need to show up and perform in front of customers day in and day out. And it's hard. It's really challenging when teams become anxious, depressed, and burnt out. Their sales performance really starts to suffer. So how do we really start changing the perspective on this topic and start looking at ways to equip individual salespeople with the pads and the helmets they need to play contact sport each day? So that's my mission, trying to get as many people in pads and helmets to manage their mental health, and not only just to take better care of themselves, but also to just achieve peak performance. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and that's amazing. It's an amazing mission. Like, I've seen a lot of the organizations that you've been talking to and posting about, and it's, you know, the ability to really focus on that and being intentional about it, I think makes a difference, right? How people feel within their organizations, whether that's okay. Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, it makes a huge impact, right? Johnny, tell us about you. You've joined me before, and we know, you know, I'm a big fan, right?
Yeah, first, before I say anything about myself, I want to mention, Jeff, I love the analogy of, like, what did you say, corporate athlete?
Yeah, like corporate sales athlete.
I love that so much, because a lot of times where people get hung up is the idea of mental and physical health being separate. And what you just said helps people bridge that gap and understand it as this, like, physical health concern. So I just wanted to say I love that, and I'm probably going to steal it for something. I don't know what yet, but I totally love it. So for people who don't know me, who are attending, thank you for being here. And Jen, thank you for having me. My name is Johnny, and I am the founder and CEO of Cope Notes. And we use daily text messages to improve mental and emotional health. And Jeff kind of shared his heart behind what he does. So I guess my heart behind what I do is I grew up with a number of mental illnesses, and I'm totally downplaying my experiences here in the interest of time. But I spent 10 plus years in clinical treatment for schizophrenia, bipolar 1, OCD, PTSD, ABCD, EFG, a lot of different mental health diagnoses. And then I went to school for psychology and learned about neuroscience and specifically abnormal psych and how we can train our brains to think in healthier patterns over time. So that's what I'm doing with Cope Notes, is training people to basically equip themselves. So rather than leaning on something else to turn to, we want you to be the person that you can turn to, because you've learned these coping strategies over months and years. And Jeff knows, just like with physical athletes, you don't naturally have a skill that takes care of itself. It's something you have to work on regularly.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's working on your mental health requires a ton of practice, especially if this is when you experience your first kind of panic attack, or you experience your first, like, it's very, very difficult to know what's going on, because it's not something that really gets discussed within our schools, within our environments. Like, the thing I always talk about is if you think about mental health just in general, like, you might experience, you know, a little bit of heartbreak in university when you break up with your crush, or you might experience a little bit of stress before an exam that's worth like 80% of your grade. but we don't really talk about it in school. And then you enter a situation like sales, where you are in a situation where you're dealing with these really, really challenging situations and these stressors on a day in and day out basis, whether it's deals falling through, missing target, responding to ghosting, and you like ping pong, you're navigating these really difficult emotions that you have no experience really navigating. So it's like, we really, really need to start prioritizing this conversation within our teams, because I like to say that the having a really fun drinking culture is not a healthy mental health strategy. So how do we kind of really start changing the conversation to focus more on like resilience and peak performance, kind of like you said, equipping people to be able to navigate these situations on their own?
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I mean, I know, and Johnny knows this, right? One of the ways I cope is I have cope notes, right? And that daily disruption for me, like it stops me from what I'm doing, right? I used to be one of those people who had the little post-it notes everywhere with those affirmations, and that like I lost sight of them all, right? And having for me that pattern disruption to be able to stop and consider some positivity for me has been super helpful, right? But you know, as this pandemic has evolved, and right before we started, I was sharing a story with you guys about like my kids, where we went to a trip to a theme park, which you think is like this amazing, exciting thing that we're going to do. And as soon as we started driving away from the house, half an hour in, suddenly there's anxiety, right? And that's not normal. It's not, it's not normal behavior for my kids who love to be outdoors and go do things, right? And when you think about that at a bigger scale and look at some of the stats around what's happened during the pandemic, I think having these conversations are really important, and, you know, feeling like it's okay to have the conversation. That's why, you know, one of the things I love about LinkedIn Live is that some of the conversations you don't typically have, you can have here, right? And we're on a business platform and everybody can hear you who wants to stop and watch. And so there was a question that came in, and it's an interesting one. What do you need this week, right? So you guys individually, as you're considering your mental health awareness week, month, you know, what are some strategies you use?
Yeah, good question. Like, I think for me, a huge thing is just making sure that I'm trying to bookend my days with self-care strategies. So having a startup routine as well as a shutdown routine that it helps me ease transition between work mode and relaxed mode more effectively. So in the morning, it'll usually be something like a cold shower. I do some Wim Hof breathing. So that's going to help me kind of start releasing some adrenaline in my body to help me get active and get moving and get kind of like ready to start my day. And then a shutdown routine, something simple as, you know, practicing a little bit of gratitude, a mini meditation, making a to-do list has been like a huge piece. But making that to-do list, the other thing that's really important is to make sure that you are not just putting things you need to accomplish at work, but carving out time specifically to build in rest and recovery periods each day, so that you're not kind of like working in this situation where you feel like you're on all the time and hunt. Like making sure that it's planned in a to-do list will help offload some of that to make sure that you actually do it. So those have been huge for me. Like, yeah, there's so many different things that you can start doing to making sure that you're showing up your best self each day. And I know this is like an old school approach, but do not underestimate how powerful the to-do list is. Even if you're going on vacation, a really good strategy to use before you leave on vacation, make sure you have a to-do list and a plan for your first sort of 24 hours back in the office, because that'll give you the opportunity, knowing to actually shut down, knowing that you have a plan to follow when you come back. So
yeah, no, and I agree with that strategy. I know that's worked for me. It's so important to have good like time management, because for me, I know if I just wing my day, as opposed to being structured and having like, this is when I'm going to do this, and I wing it, I feel like I'm not as in control of the things that I need to achieve. And
uncertainty is the fuel for anxiety, and
right,
and like
yeah,
you can mitigate how much uncertainty you're facing on a daily basis by thinking about potential kind of pitfalls and challenges you face ahead of time. You'll feel way more confident in those situations if you have a plan. I like to say a rejection handle is a big thing for me too.
Mm-hmm.
In sales, we have a lot of objection handles. So we have things like, oh, when a buyer gives us a pricing objection, here's what we say, here's the steps we follow. When someone, says no or pushes back, here's our objection handle, what we follow. These are plans that people follow for these highly uncertain events. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is, like, most salespeople don't have rejection handles. What's the plan you follow when you get rejected? What's the plan you follow when you miss target? When you enter these highly emotional situations that, bring in a lot of uncertainty, if you can think about and have a rejection handle before these events take place, it'll help preserve your prefrontal cortex so that you can think logically and navigate them in a healthier way to limit the impact on your overall mental health.
Yeah, those are some great insights. Thank you for sharing that. So, Johnny, Lydia here says sales is an emotional roller coaster that just keeps going. So, what would you say to that, to the sales emotional roller coaster? I know you're connected with a lot of salespeople, and they all got a lot of value out of it when you joined me back in December. So, as things have evolved, what would you say to this emotional roller coaster?
I feel weird speaking about this as someone who's not in a traditional sales role.
Yeah.
I want to pass it to Jeff to answer this one. I'm more equipped to answer the first question, the coping strategies and mechanisms.
Yeah.
But as far as serving in a formal sales role, while I have been doing a lot of social selling because I run a startup, I'd almost rather swap questions, and I'll answer Jeff's question after Jeff gets a chance to answer the real sales question, because I think I'd be speaking out of turn if I pretended to know. I get a lot of rejection as a founder because I'm out there selling, but nowhere near what someone in a full-time sales role is experiencing.
Well, yes, but as a founder, you are doing a lot of presenting and pitching and sales. So you're saying you're not in sales, though I wouldn't downgrade your expertise in that area. But having said that, why don't you tell us what coping strategies you use, and then we'll allow Jeff to talk about the roller coaster. So tell me what are you doing?
Yeah, I do want to clarify though. I know that I am a salesperson, but it's kind of like, I've been touring in a band for 12 years. And if someone's like, oh yeah, I tour, we went on a 3-day tour up to Georgia. And I'm like, oh, you don't tour. You're not a touring musician. So it's similar, but different. I just want to make sure I'm showing enough respect to the salespeople on the horn who are like, oh, you've never even used Salesforce. No, I haven't, because it's scary to me. So if you want to talk about anxiety around sales, me opening up Salesforce and realizing I'm so overwhelmed. But in terms of strategies, just one thing that kind of rocked me, that my cousin actually told me this weekend, that's rattling around in my brain since then. He works in healthcare admin, and he's one of those married to his jobs types, which I am definitely that. And he said, I learned something that totally wrecked my relationship with my work in a good way. It actually improved my relationship with my work. And I said, how could something wreck your relationship with your job and improve it at the same time? And he said he learned that on average, if an employee dies, their employer will replace them within 2 weeks. And then he said, I look at my wife and my child, and they could never replace me. You're not going to put out a Craigslist ad the next day or the next week, looking for a new husband and father to my child. And then he said, I've been investing all of my time and attention into an ecosystem that would be quick to replace me. And I'm taking time away from an ecosystem that could never replace me. So he said it really helped him shift his focus towards, his family and the people who couldn't replace him. And then that's actually improving his performance at work because his identity isn't tied to it. So I'm reading this book called To Hell with the Hustle. I see your hustle thing behind you.
Yeah.
And someone told me about the book To Hell with the Hustle. So I listened to part of it this morning, and they were saying that the real cultural problem why so many people in the workforce right now have such high levels of stress and anxiety is because work used to be about physical production, like the production of physical goods or monetary value. But now work has become, like, culturally, we view it as a source of our personal value, like we're creating who we are through our work. And the closer you tie your identity to a task, the more important it is for you to achieve at that task in your own mind, where if you blow a sale, you feel like your identity is impacted, like I suck, versus that wasn't a good call. So what I'm trying to do right now is shift my focus of my identity out of my work, and then instead work on my identity outside of the workplace, and then bring my identity to work rather than having them be intrinsically connected.
I think that's super insightful. And that really resonated with me. You know, I actually lost a team member recently. And, you know, the idea of how much we invest in work when there's so much more. So thank you for sharing that. That was great. Jeff, did you want to take the question about the emotional roller coaster?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I guess one piece that I'll add just before is I think we shouldn't be afraid. Might be a little depressing, but we shouldn't be afraid to like use death to our advantage. Like thinking about potentially dying, and whenever that time comes, like that's a really good way to kind of heat check yourself on where you're investing time and aligning your priorities to making sure that you are living your most meaningful life. Like I was diagnosed with testicular cancer like 2.5 years ago, and by no means did I come close to death. So I don't want to kind of say that. It was like a really scary experience, but it really helped me kind of realign to be like, look, like, all of this, it shook me out of this like hypnosis I was in of like, oh, I'll do that in 2 years. I'll do that in 5 years. Like I still got more time. It's like, no, like things can change like that. And you want to make sure that you're staying present and living a meaningful life and doing what you can that's really important to you on an ongoing basis. So it's, use death to your advantage and sort of like check in with yourself and kind of consider something or consider what that moment would be like and what would you don't want to regret is a big one. So emotions. The emotions question is a good one. I get asked it a lot. Like sales is like a roller coaster of emotions, really high highs, really low lows. How do you kind of navigate that in a healthy way? So one of the biggest things, I can't remember the author. I know Brené Brown talks about it. There's a few other kind of people that talk about it. And it's, the problem is like a lot of us are emotionally illiterate, and we need to work on our emotional literacy. So emotional literacy is being able to describe the emotions that you're feeling and put them into words so that you can not only make yourself feel safe, but also explain how you're feeling to other people so that they can understand how you're feeling. The problem is most of us, like I said, are emotionally illiterate. And what that means is we can only identify sort of the really strong, powerful emotions like anger, fear, anxiety. We can identify those things, but we can't identify some of the more sensitive emotions that we face in sales, maybe feeling insecure or feeling jealous or feeling judgmental or feeling frantic. Like what do each one of those little emotions feel like? And as a result, what starts to happen is if we're only emotionally literate in the real powerful emotions, we're only able to describe how we're feeling when we're really angry or really sad or really happy. And you go up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you spend time labeling your emotions and kind of working on journaling about your emotions to trace back, oh, why am I feeling frantic today? Or why am I feeling judgmental today? It's way easier for you to pull apart that wave of emotion. That's the other thing that's really important is you are not your emotions. You are simply experiencing your emotions at a moment in time. And when you kind of make that separation and create that space, it's way easier to think of your emotions as waves that you're experiencing. And when they get bundled up or you're facing really scary waves, it can feel like you're drowning. It feels like you're drowning. You can't swim. But if you can start labeling them, pulling them apart, it's way easier to calm that mind down and calm that emotional roller coaster.
Jeff, I don't know if I don't think I've talked to you about this before, but I play this game called Where's the Rat, which is just like this internal game. I don't really talk to anybody about it. But what I do is like if I notice that I'm feeling funky, if I'm breaking a pattern or habit, or I'm noticing that I'm not acting like myself, oftentimes this is someone else asking me like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. And then I like, why would they ask me that? So it's kind of like an escape room kind of puzzle solving thing where first I go, what is the emotion I'm feeling? So anyone who's spent time with me in person knows that I say things like this. I am so frustrated right now. I am really embarrassed right now. And I'll use literally, I am sad. I am happy. And I'll use these basic elementary phrases to say out loud how I feel. So boom, already the feeling is identified. So that's step one. And then step two is, where's the rat, which is like you're trying to find the source of that feeling. And almost always it's not what you think. Like, and it's not what someone else thinks either. Like if they're like, oh, rough day at work, and you're like, well, hold on. I was already frustrated when I started working today, so it couldn't have been work. And then you trace it back and back and back. And eventually you're like, oh, it's because my mom asked me to do a favor for her when I totally don't have time. And I said yes. So I overextended myself even before I went to work. And being able to like label the feeling immediately and then chase it back to the source, it reminds you of exactly what you said at the end, which is I'm not my feelings because I found where the feeling came from. Once you can separate yourself from what you're feeling, and you know that you're just the person feeling the feeling, you are not the feeling, you experience this freedom where once it's identified, it's kind of like if a toddler says, mommy, 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 and you say yes, and then the kid's like, I forgot.
Yeah.
But addressing it, like looking directly at that feeling and just say, yes, what do you want? 9 times out of 10, the feeling is like, oh, I just wanted you to look at me and acknowledge me.
For sure. I think another big piece of that is like when you can kind of get an idea that there is a rat in the system when you find yourself feeling overly judgmental or overly wanting to blame someone, whether that's blaming other people or blaming or judging yourself. That's another good sign that your mental health has started to decline, and there's that kind of like internal intrusive thought that's cycling. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that strategy. It's a good way to trace it back and kind of identify what it is.
I think that self-awareness is key, and I think that's a great strategy, is trying to figure out like where did it originate. I think that's super useful. So Lydia shares with us, at one point in my life, the only thing that kept me from jumping from my 22nd floor balcony was a commitment to see my son reach 18. And then, like to carry on for family members. And, thank you for sharing that, Lydia. I think that's vulnerable of you. And I think when I look at my family too, it's the gratitude and wanting to see how my children develop and what happens and what their journeys look like. And I think a lot of people kind of focus on that. What other strategies would you put in place besides, obviously seeking mental health help, getting a therapist and some of those things for people who are struggling? What would you?
Yeah, like I think building awareness is like a big piece. I don't know if this answers sort of the question specifically, because people that are struggling with mental illness, this is like a really challenging one to implement. But kind of speaking to the comment that you just read, I think sort of that strategy of, her thinking about her son was kind of like, it really kind of highlighted the importance of social connection and having that support network. And it's really important to realize that within sales, like sales creates an environment that's very individualistic. And as a result, it's very easy to start thinking, for that anxiety to start zoning in and becoming hyper-focused on you. You're going to lose your job. You're not going to miss target. You're bad at sales. And as a result, that camera starts zooming in. And it's like on your face, and you start seeing all these like imperfections of like who you are, and like you start judging and blaming yourself. And one of the most important strategies is like, how do you focus on them? Like before going into a call, before going into a meeting, before giving a presentation, like who are you there to serve? Who are you there to help? Like taking this altruistic kind of servant approach is a really, really effective way to keep your attention focused on serving them. And as a result, your anxiety, you aren't in the picture. So your anxiety, it's way harder for your anxiety to get wrapped up if you are not there. So it's like, how do you make sure that you're focused on serving them in every meeting, every presentation? Like I talk about mental health and sales, and I have really good strategies, but there's for sure days when I'm sluggish or feeling burnt out and don't want to get out of bed. And the biggest thing that gets me moving is not thinking about how tired I am or thinking about like, the struggles and the challenges I have to face that day. It's like, no, thinking about the salesperson who's having a panic attack right now or struggling with their sleep or bottom of the dashboard and trying to navigate that, thinking about how I can serve and help them is a really great way to kind of get me moving and start focusing on who I'm serving.
What
Yeah. Sorry,
I'm
Jeff.
going to mention how important hope is in that equation. So Jeff, part of the social connection piece, just as an example, or part of the idea of thinking about other people, is the expectation or hope that there's going to be some positive fruit, like that relationship will be healthy or I will help someone. And my favorite phrase ever that I have to get tattooed on me. I'm running out of room, but I want to get it tattooed somewhere. And it's the phrase, tomorrow might be better, because it is literally always true. That statement is 100% true always. Yeah. There is no guarantee, but if you hang on to that, you think like, I'm 28 years old. I've likely never eaten at my favorite restaurant. I've never even discovered it. I might discover that 3.5 years from now or something. I've never heard the funniest joke I've ever heard. I'm going to hear that when I'm 53. So like, we haven't met these amazing people we're going to meet. And in a sales setting, I have to think of that too. I think, wow, CopeNote's biggest sale might be in November of this year. So imagine if I slow down now, if I say, man, I'm tired of these rejections, or I'm tired of people ghosting me and I'm so frustrated, and I don't get to November, which would be our biggest sale to date. But then little do I know, 7 months after that, there's going to be my next biggest sale. So the idea that tomorrow might be better has carried me through a lot of things, because a lot of times we say, if today was this bad, who knows how bad tomorrow is going to be. But you also hear people say, if today was this bad, it can only go up from here. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow is definitely not going to be as bad as today. So I cling to the phrase, tomorrow might be better, because I have been suicidal in my life. I'm a suicide survivor. And the idea of a potential better future has carried me through a lot.
That's great. That's amazing. Well, I'm glad it's carried you through, and you're doing big things with Cope Notes. Because like, I think what you're doing in terms of like interrupting those negative thoughts and those patterns is like extremely effective and an awesome strategy. I would also I agree with hope as well. Like I really like how I think it's, again, I keep bringing it up. I think Brené Brown talks about hope having kind of 3 components. It's, you have a goal, so you know where you're going. You have a path, so you kind of have a plan and a way to get there. And the big one is you have agency. So you feel in control of your destiny to kind of action that plan and action that path and follow that path. But I think that's where, specifically within sales, that third piece is usually crushed more often than not, is having that agency to be creative, to, do something different in sales to achieve that metrics. Like, we're so focused on sales process, and we've essentially engineered emotion and creativity and intrinsic motivation out of our sales process. So we need to make sure that we're giving our teams agency and autonomy if we want to make sure that salespeople are showing up hopeful and therefore more resilient on a daily basis.
Yeah, because you can't discount what mindset brings to sales success, right? Mm-hmm. Without the right mindset, you're not necessarily, you'll be working, but you won't necessarily be getting the results that you want, right? And how big of a role that mindset plays, I think, is huge. And I love the points that Johnny made about, you never know, when the funniest joke and so on. I remember, going into my 30s, I was like, I wish I had done so much more. Like, I wasn't married. I had done stuff, but like, I had an expectation of where I was supposed to be. I was like super depressed for a little while there. And then now I'm in my 40s, and I'm like, my 40s were the best ever. Like, I know stuff now. And like, if I had any clue all the stuff I didn't know back then, and you don't know what the next thing is going to be, that's going to be the amazing thing. And I think that's super impactful. We're at 12:30 already, guys, and we didn't even talk about the sales sabbaticals and all that. But, I like to keep this short for people. I will add, Lydia here has a comment recognizing and acknowledging that we have agency. I know many women don't feel they have agency. And I mean, that's something that I've struggled with throughout my career, is that having agency and being able to, have a voice. So I think you both brought some excellent insights and some tips here to, just really keeping that mindset, everything from the to-do list. Just any final thoughts to share with the audience that you'd like to share from each of you would be helpful.
Yeah, like I think this is like just such an important topic, and we're at this like really unique moment in time right now. Specifically, more so in the U.S. Like Canada's a little bit behind from like a COVID standpoint, and look, like mental health was a problem. Like people were struggling through mental health before the pandemic. Now we've all rallied around this external threat, and it's helped create space for this conversation, which is amazing. As soon as we get by this pandemic, mental health is still going to be something that we all struggle with because it's totally normal. So it's important to prioritize this stuff. A lot of organizations were like, wow, like that shift to working from home was really difficult, but a lot of us were navigating difficult emotions in the comfort of our own homes, surrounded by family members that we love and care about us. Like the switch back to in-office work is going to be as bad, or if not worse, because you're going to be surrounded by strangers who've been hired over the last 12 months, people that you don't necessarily trust. So we need to make sure that we're putting in the work now to prioritize the mental health conversation, to make sure that our employees or companies or teammates feel comfortable opening up about mental health when they go back to the office. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Johnny?
Yeah. I want to piggyback off of what Jeff said. First, I want to do a shameless plug, and then I want to do a shameless plug for the people who are attending. So shameless plug for me is Cope Notes is hiring a salesperson. So if you are a salesperson who cares about mental health, please hit me up. The plug for you now, if you're attending this, a lot of times after a talk like this, we'll say like, oh, share this talk, or, and it seems like it's serving the show, but I want to serve you in your workplace. And what Jeff said is it's important to not allow this conversation to like live in a box. Like the worst thing that could happen is you spend 30 minutes on a live thing on LinkedIn and then you go about your daily life. So what I want you to do, if you're still watching this right now, talk to someone, one person, one colleague, one person, either in your circle or in your vertical, or preferably someone that you work with on a regular basis, about something from this conversation. Ask them. You don't have to share this video if you're not trying to, but go approach someone who you work with and bring up some, I watched a LinkedIn Live thing today and they were talking about, even if it's something that we didn't cover, sales sabbaticals. Have you heard about sales sabbaticals? I want to come check it out. Like, please don't let this conversation live in a rectangle on your computer screen. Like, take it out of this and into your work life. And if you just pick one person and mention one thing, this LinkedIn Live has been a huge success.
That is a great takeaway. And thank you for saying that. And so we like emoticons. So if you want to do like a little heart or like any of that insightful thing, that'd be okay too. But I totally agree that if all you do is you take this back to your organization and have a conversation with one person about, mental health and how they're doing, and just, seek to understand and we're all going through something, right? And being open and being just open to the idea that people can come and talk to you, I think is super important. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And next week, we've got Rocky Voria, who's going to be talking about her journey. She is a director of global sales development over at IBM. So thank you so much. And make sure you check out Cope Notes, because seriously, though, there have been days where I've gotten my text and gone, okay, Johnny. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Have a great week, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.